Okay, so the recording's in progress. So I'm going to really start off. My name's Tim Anderson, for those who haven't met me before. I'm Sales and Marketing Manager at Ybrant Partners. I'd like to just introduce Ybrant Partners to you. We're a UK-based IT consulting organisation delivering human experience management built on SAP SuccessFactors ERP. Our focus is delivering solutions to organisations that put people first. And I guess it's our experience within delivering digital HR solutions that provide us with the experience and, dare I say, perhaps the authority to share our thoughts with you today on digitising your HR to prepare for the future. And this is certainly a subject we believe in generally, but it's become even more important, I think, over the last few weeks with the COVID-19 pandemic in mind. And I'm sure that some of the thoughts and backgrounds and experiences that we can share with you today will help you both going forward and in the long term. I'd like if I could ask you to just move the slides on, if I can, to take a quick look at the agenda. What we're going to be doing is I'll introduce the team in a moment. Thank you. I think Joji's in control there. I'm going to ask the team to introduce. I'm going to introduce the team in a moment. Then we've selected the particular team, the panel, for reasons of experience and expertise. So they're going to be sharing with us their current challenges and how they've helped clients during the lockdown. We're then going to move on to how we should prepare as we're coming out of lockdown. Some of you may have heard the conversation we were having before the start of the presentation that certainly in the UK, some of the workers have gone back to work today. Those that can't work from home are being allowed back out, people like in construction sites and in factories. So there's some important things we perhaps need to consider in the immediate future and what we need to do to prepare for that. And then we're going to look at the long-term effect of that, both from the point of view of being safe, but also generally how HR and technology merges together to give us better processes and more efficiencies. And then we'll look at the key takeaways and the advantages of digitising HR for the future. And this will go on for about 45, 50 minutes, and there's plenty of times for Q&A at the end. So if I could then ask to move to the next slide, I'd like to introduce our panel. We are joined firstly by Ybrant Partners. Ybrant is a founding management partner of the consultancy organisation Masflair. He's a senior HR leader with more than 2 decades of diverse industry experience and has significant international HR exposure, having managed at a director level culturally diverse teams in Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia and Europe. And in particular, his experience as an HR director is one of the reasons we're delighted to have him on the panel today. Ybrant, could I just ask you briefly to say hello to the audience? Hi, Ybrant. Are you able to say hello to the audience? Okay, we'll get Ybrant input in a while. The second member of the panel.
Thanks, Steve, for that introduction.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Ybrant. The second member of our panel is Rajesh Prayaga. Now, Rajesh is not only one of the founders of Ybrant, he's also our CEO. And Rajesh has also a couple of decades of experience working with clients such as National Grid and Specsavers, implementing HR digital technology to support people engagement. And so Rajesh is bringing to this panel his experience and expertise as a business owner, but also as a very experienced person of implementing and understand requirements from a business perspective. So Rajesh, if you'd be able to say a quick hello to the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Hello, everyone. It's Rajesh here. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Rajesh. We'll come back to you for far more input in a moment. And last, but certainly by no means least, Sarang Kulkarni. Sarang has 16 years experience in the field of human resources, and in particular as an HR manager. In addition to having experience in core HR domain, he's also led HR technology implementation, SAP HR, and success factors in India, Europe, and in Southeast Asia. And I understand he's a firm believer that emerging IT technologies are key to business enablement. And I'm really going to enjoy listening to his experience and expertise of being in the front line with the sleeves rolled up and actually doing these things. So Sarang, welcome, and you can say hello to the audience.
Thank you, Tim. Hello, everyone, and good to be a part of this webinar. Looking forward for a beautiful interaction over here.
Thank you. So without any further ado, I'd like to move on and begin to ask the first question. I'll address this to Andrew, if I may. I wonder, what have been a couple of immediate areas that clients that you work with have been asking you for support during lockdown?
Sure. So hello, everybody. I think, as I see, for all of us, this lockdown is a very unprecedented thing. We never have experienced such a thing, and so is our clients, and therefore it's a very unprecedented situation, and everybody more or less are on the same boat. We do not have any clear answer or a clarity for various things. And probably, therefore, we need to be agile to, continuously learn and see how the situation is and figure out our answers. So some of the key concern areas in which I interact with some of my clients or wherever I'm advising are broadly into fourfold stream. The first aspect is coming to in the area of primarily the concern regarding the health, safety, and well-being of the employees. Okay. The second element is about people are working from home. Now, there are business which always worked out of home. Okay. The degree may be different, but then there are businesses where working from home is a little new phenomena. So they are kind of grappling with the situation and answer. The third element is in the area of hiring. So some organizations have already done some hiring during the initial period of lockdown. And by the way, today is the 50th day of lockdown in India. So it's almost 2 months now. So therefore, there are organizations who were not initially clear that the people who have been hired, how they should be onboarded. So some organizations have gone ahead and virtually onboarded them. Some organizations have spoken to them and tried to see whether their joining date can be postponed and so on and so forth. Organizations which have a digital onboarding system, I think they were benefited, so they could easily onboard some of the people digitally. So that's one of the key areas of onboarding and getting people starting their work once they have been selected, pre-lockdown phase. Another area of concern is that when we are talking about working from home or virtual working, so to say, not that everyone is equally equipped in terms of resources, in terms of space, time, and initially people were grappling with how to do that. Managers were also grappling with that situation because when you are at home, working from home and also working for home. So therefore, there has been a bit of challenge for people that how do they manage this both. But I think, we all learn fast, so people have been able to figure that out as they are progressing. One of the interesting conversation is also, which I'm having with some of the clients, in fact, last month, is around how do they treat compensation, how do they treat reward at this point of time. Also, many companies, they had their performance pay, variable pay, some of the incentive payout which has to happen during this phase. So I could see there is a mixed bag of approach. There are companies who have gone ahead and ensured the pay is being, kind of taken care of. There are set of companies who have done a little bit of interesting thing of deferring some part of the pay. So some part of the pay, a large part have been paid right now. Some part would be paid after 2 months or 3 months in a way. There are companies who have also decided in terms of a straight, pay cut in terms of depending on the compensation structure they have. They have decided to, cut the pay for at least for the next 6 months. Okay, so there have been a mixed responses on this area. I think one thing which is also interestingly emerging as a thought that some of these things are unprecedented. So therefore, nobody has got a perfect answer. Each business, each organization has their own unique challenge of their own cost structure, fixed cost structure, their own liquidity, their own cash flow, which they need to manage. At the same time, this is also a time where organizations will be visiting or revisiting their own core values. Okay, so there is a reality of business which is going on. At the same time, what are your values and do you live up to that values? So I think answers are somewhere in between, and I think that's what I hear when I'm having conversation with some of my initial clients.
Okay, that's fantastic feedback there. And what I'm hearing, I think, is that there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to this. Each organisation are taking this very much in consideration of their own context. But I wonder, addressing this now to Rajesh, I often hear you talk about mission-critical processes when we're talking to our clients. Can you share with me some mission-critical items that we as Ybrant have been able to support our clients with during this time?
Thank you, Tim. Am I audible? Hello? You can hear me, Tim?
Yes, Rajesh. That's
yes, Rajesh, yeah, I can.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for that question. I mean, what are the key things, what I would like to highlight here is the mission critical processes. First off, the organization or the company needs to sustain, given where we have unprecedented challenges, as Indrajit pointed out. The business and the employee continuity needs to sustain. That is the fundamental, the foremost and the foremost point that we need to go ahead and look at it. And in terms of the payroll, because everyone is in a distress as to how we need to go ahead and look at it. What is the next in terms of the financial, in terms of the well-being? How do I go ahead and make sure that my livelihood is okay, running okay? So these are a few things with regards to the payroll and regards to the compensation. These are few critical processes which the organizations need to look into, make sure they are going on very well. And there are situations where the organizations cannot sustain, and they have asked the employees to go on furlough. And fortunate enough, the government, UK government has announced the certain furlough who have been made redundant to go over, apply for the furloughs right now. And just to give you a figure, about 7.3 million employees have been put on or have claimed for furlough, and the government has given out about 10 billion pounds as such. So there is lots of challenges what the organizations are facing as well, in order to ensure that supply chain is going on quite well, whether they may be a healthcare company or they may be a manufacturing company or a retail company. So every one of the industry sectors has taken a lot of hit, and of course, the travel, because of the travel ban, the organizations are hit where they cannot go ahead and sustain the critical processes. One of the key things also what we need to look at from an employee point of view, there are essential services what we need to go ahead and put in place, which also is if you look at from an employee point of view, These are stress-related issues that are coming up, and these are processes which where we need to go ahead and have the organizations need to look at what are these services, how we can go ahead and focus it on the employees, make sure that they are not stressed out, and then there is programs which are critical that needs to run through, and they are going on, and this is where workforce engagement needs to happen. And there's a few, they are not the overall or the complete set of processes. I'm trying to touch only a few critical ones here. And once these are addressed, we have the employees and the organization sustainability, and that goes on very well.
Okay, thank you for that, Rajesh. And I also remember you saying to me how one client in particular you were helping because they had the end of year books to complete, and this was going on all at the same time as having to give information for people to be able to gather their furloughed payments. So there's some critical things just to keep people sane, if you like, and still in there.
Exactly, Tim. Just to add to that, thank you for that. I mean, one of the key things what I would like to add here is due to this situation, there have been quite a few examples. I mean, reading through. Sorry, can somebody go on mute, please? So NGA, NGA, which is one of the companies they have reported that payroll could not be run for certain organizations because they have had security issues with the sensitive systems, what they were working on. And while people are working remotely, not everyone had the same kind of security access, and payroll could not be run. And also on top of it, this is a time where promotions or the new performance objectives will be released around this period of the year. And organizations like Oracle or SAP or maybe Workday or another applications, because of HMRC's policies, they go ahead and release patches. These technical patches also bring in certain challenges unless they are applied. Everything has come in at a juncture, at a point where these challenges have come in, just to add to more issues. So organizations are facing some unprecedented situation.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Now I'd like to move on because actually it's now coming to a critical time where we are beginning to see the green lights, the green shoots, if you like. So I guess the next question, again, back to it, as we move from lockdown and perhaps not necessarily going back to work to normal, but actually with these strange conditions, what are the things that are important for us to consider as employers with our workforce as we return into work? Indra, you're on mute at the moment. Could I ask you to come off mute? And
yeah, am I audible now? Yeah. Well, thanks for that question, Tim. I think one thing is for sure. I mean, we all know lockdown per se is not a cure of COVID, right? And we also understand that it is going to take time for its treatment, for its vaccine to come, and till such time we need to coexist, we need to live together, and we need to find a way to get back to work. Globally, therefore, there are various economies, they are slowly, step by step opening up, and the question between life and livelihood is a hot topic for discussion everywhere. Back home in India, I think we are expecting, as per our Prime Minister's address yesterday, that by next week we will come to know about lockdown 4, which will have new measures, and a large part of it is more or less the tonality is that getting back to work. Okay. So when we are discussing about how do we get back to work, I think the first very interesting aspect of that is the workplace ready to absorb the people who are getting back to work? I'm sure there are a lot of guidelines which are available and given by the government and regulated in that way, covering things like social distancing, covering things like certain minimum percentage of employee working in a particular office or working in shifts. In India, some of the labor laws which have been amended in terms of increasing the working time in a particular shift to accommodate this current situation. How do we address it? There are always, there are interesting things also in terms of how people commute to their workplace. So other day, a conversation with one of the entrepreneur, comes with thing that if somebody has to organize various modes of private transport to ferry people to the factory from different locations, that adds into additional cost. Okay, so that's another new angle. While cost is not the only angle, but availability of such transport in the current situation is also a question mark. Things like the organizations which are more brick and mortar, who are dependency on labor, who are labor intensive, especially in our country, we see that a large part of labor has migrated to their hometown. Okay, so even if you open up your factory operations, you do not have too many people to work. Therefore, how do you work? And therefore, some of the things which would be important, that in this kind of a situation, how do we multi-skill people? Okay, how do we utilize their multi-skill or fungibility in a way so that we are able to manage the current operation with minimal number of people? So I think one of the important aspects also to address things like a part of the employees will probably continue to work from home. A part of the employee will come to the workplace and they will keep on getting rotated unless and until the situation becoming normal. So there is a workforce which is virtual. There is a workforce which is physically at the workplace, and they need to coordinate. So things like how do they collaborate with each other? How do they ensure that they work as a one cross-functional team with some key projects in mind? How do they ensure that the ball is not dropping anywhere? I think some of these things will be very, very important aspect of collaboration between a virtual team and a physical team on the ground. Another interesting aspect is how we ensure in a virtual situation or a semi-virtual situation that people are engaged. Okay. Earlier, when we were working, people were under one roof, so it was very easy for a manager to go across to his team and have a quick discussion and a chat with a coffee and get some of this thing, really sorted. But now, if you have to plan a meeting, you really don't know availability of people. Okay, so even if you have an urgent issue, it becomes a little bit of a task to plan a meeting, plan a discussion. So therefore, how do you interact? How do you communicate? How do you collaborate in a virtual situation? I think these are something which would be challenging, and therefore, for organization where these issues are understood well and the organization had put some guidelines or a framework of how do we work from home, I think that will help the managers and employees. Wherever those guidelines are not clear, then probably from both sides there would be challenges and ambiguity in terms of getting things done. One more important aspect in this scenario, I think it is very important for organization to articulate their short-term and medium-term objective and vision very clearly in this situation. Because though COVID is a grave situation, but when we come out of that, when we start working, we are working for what? What is that important goal or objective we have in front of us? If that is well articulated and communicated with the team, I think that becomes very, very inspiring. I think to do that, what I also understand, most of the organization, they are finding that in the first 12 months of their fiscal, the first quarter is kind of washed out. Okay. Typically in India, if we are talking of a April to March financial year, the first quarter, April, May, June, is very, very underperforming for most of the companies, barring few exceptions. So therefore, by and large, some companies are thinking it's a year of 9 months, okay? And hopefully from July, August, things will start opening up. Some people are not that optimistic also. They are thinking probably this year we will have effective 6 months. What happens if there is a reoccurrence or a second wave of COVID coming in? How do we manage that? So therefore, organizations are by and large doing a lot of scenario planning, okay? And they are preparing their budget and scenario plans in a way so that they mitigate those risks. And obviously, some of this scenario planning and budgetary planning will have a implication in terms of the people, their people budget, their performance, their reward, and various other things. So I think that's another piece when we start working. We need to answer that what's our immediate vision, what's our medium-term vision, what kind of budget or what kind of operating plan do we have, what kind of operating plan for HR do we have, what are our priorities for the next 6 to 9 months. We may not continue to do everything what we used to do in a normal situation. That may not be also necessary right now, but we need to understand what are the things which would be necessary right now and important to ensure there is a high level of morale and motivation and well-being in the employees so that we start supporting the business in a more effective way in the current situation. So these are some of my thoughts in terms of when we get back, what are our preparation and what are our priorities.
That's absolutely excellent, Indrajit. There's some rich sharing of experience and ideas there. I picked up on a couple there, multi-skilling, being agile. I also picked up on the requirement for good leadership and good governance, which then sort of brings me into Rajesh. What are the sort of things that you see, if we take that sort of line from Indrajit, that technology can support?
Yeah. Thank you, Tim, for the question. I would suggest, just taking the lead from what Indrajit mentioned, a couple of areas what it could be is whether scheduling and rostering with regards to the flexible work timings. As you know, there is staggered work timings, which is being discussed these days. And communication as an overall is going to be quite the key. Lots of communication that will be required. Employees and organization are receiving from the governments, from the medical fraternity, and from the transport and others as to when the transport will run and everything. So in the larger frame of everything, if you look at it from the supply chain aspect as well, if I take one example to explain what is required here, is if you take a production or producing a particular part or a product which we are trying to do, I have the shop floor that I need to consider. I have the supplier who is sending me the raw materials, and also the logistics provider who is delivering the goods to me. So unless all of them work in a sync where the staggered work times apply, your job is not going to be done. So you'll have to just not consider only your element of the work or your organization, but you'll have to start looking from an overall perspective what that would be. And this requires, as I mentioned earlier on, there is a lot of stress in the system at this time. Organizations are going through a lot of stress. So what we need to look at is, how is this going to impact anything what we are trying to do? So is the answer not to do anything? So that would have a lot of negative impact in terms of the overall economy. But then how do I go ahead and bring everything back again in terms of a staggered manner and try to go ahead and give that stimulus where it is required by bringing back or resuming the programs what is required. And in this particular area is where a lot of communication, a lot of empathy, as Indrajit already pointed out, the one related to the guidelines, the policy framework. There is a new, I wouldn't like to call that as an abnormal, but this is a new normal. So it is a new normal. Everyone needs to adopt to that. And as such, adopting to a new situation as early as possible is important. And this is where one of the key focus areas with regards to the technology also come in. And what we need to look at is we need to run through the processes what we have right now, and that continuity again on that particular point to make sure that the continuity and the sustainability is in place.
Okay, thanks for that, Rajesh. Now I'd like to perhaps get on to the next section of, okay, this is what the immediate thing is post-lockdown. What about the long-term plans, preparing for the future? I'm reminded here particularly, or because I'm an advocate of cloud computing, that maybe there's never been a better time to look at the cloud for some of these solutions so that we can keep continuity in these business processes. But that's my just personal take on this. But I'd like to ask, again, maybe bring Sarang into this. What are the key areas, key items that we need to consider going forward?
Okay, so from my side, I think one of the most important aspects for us to also understand that, though there are a lot of talks about a new normal, I'm not sure personally that whether it is going to be absolutely a new normal going forward, okay? Because I think a human being, a social being, they have an innate need for, talking to people, meeting people, socializing, and all of that. The current situation is not a normal situation, and therefore we have adapted to a new behavior. I personally think that once situation become normal, then probably we will also go back to a great extent to our normal behavior. And does that mean that everything, whatever we are experiencing, is not going to be there or relevant? It is also not like that. One simple example in India, about 2.5 years back, when we had demonetization, where the currencies were banned and there was a shortage of currency to kind of transact, government was talking about digital payment. Okay. Subsequently, there was a good inflow of currency, but people developed the habit to a great extent for a digital transaction. Now, both coexist. Okay, the percentages can differ. Similarly, I think to me it looks like a new normal would not be 100% working from home or working remotely. We will get back to the workplace. We will continue to meet our employees, our customers, our vendors, but we may not be that frequently traveling to meet them. We will start using some of the tools which are available to communicate, to collaborate, and much more such tools, I think, will, and also learn. I think those tools will become very, very important for people to adopt as we go forward. I think one of the few things which I think from my side are very important from a long-term point of view. I think this is a very important time for leader and leadership to establish their vision for the organization, the kind of culture they want to build for the organization, their values, what they display for the people, and what the collective values for the organization. And I think this is the time where that tone, if it already exists, it can be further reinforced, it can be said. People will be observing and seeing those leadership behavior and those leadership values from a close counter. The second aspect, I think, it is very important to communicate well and probably over-communicate at this point of time, talking about the future, talking about the goals, talking about the milestones, what one is going to achieve. As people will be back, they will be back with a lot of insecurities. Okay, many jobs are already going. and many jobs probably will be, under question mark. Therefore, it is very, very important that once the employee is back to workplace, he knows his role very clearly, he has a good amount of clarity, and there is somebody to talk to who can give him that assurance, or who can at least, tell him, what is expected out of him. So I think going forward, it will require more conversation at the workplace, more engagement at the workplace, and therefore more communication, and communication to inspire people and bring clarity would be very, very important. Third element, I think a lot is going to change, or a lot can be done in the area of skilling, reskilling people, in terms of multi-skilling people, in terms of creating fungibility. I think the organizations which have a greater business continuity plan or enterprise risk management system in this current situation, what I'm hearing, they have been able to manage some of this crisis situation better than others who didn't have a functional business continuity. So therefore, how a good business continuity plan can be made, I think that is something which will be also very, very important, so that going forward, if there is a situation where the company or the activities need to get into a start, stop, start kind of a mode, you are prepared enough in terms of your logistics planning, your people resource planning, your financial planning, your customer engagement plans, and all of that, and all interfaces in between that how you are able to sustain your business activity remotely or with a minimal number of staff for a week or 2 weeks or for a month. I think that is the test of a good business continuity plan. I know some organizations which have really worked during this period to create a strong business continuity plan and ensure that the people are there, working as per that. They created certain task force, and they have, kind of, seen that they are kind of, taking charge and bringing clarity to the people. And the most important aspect for the long term would be that a little more on the business side, I see that some business model also may undergo some change. Businesses will also try to innovate different ways of doing things. Okay, and when a business model will undergo a change and business will try to innovate itself, that will implication on three things for the organization. That will have implication in the structure of the organization. That will have an implication on the talent of the organization, and that will have an implication on the skill sets of those talent in the organization. So I see a lot more work, many areas which will open up in terms of, the talent management, talent development, having a right kind of a organization structure to, help that innovative aspect of, business model which will be coming in force. So some of these things I think are, in my mind, are the important aspect. But just to kind of sum it up from my side, so three things which will be more greater importance, I personally see a lot of work in the area of culture and values and ensuring leaders are living up to that, managers are living up to that. Second aspect of ensuring there is a greater amount of communication and greater amount of collaboration. And third, more in the area of planning in terms of planning work, planning role, planning team. This is the business continuity plan for the next 1.5 years. I think combination of all of that I see are more in the medium to long term kind of a requirement.
Okay, thanks, Indrajit. Rajesh, over to you. I'm cognitive also that we're nearly coming up to the 45-minute mark, but if I can share that with you, with similar.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Just taking the lead from Indrajit, what you mentioned, shared values and culture is one of the key things when we are trying to go ahead and prepare for ourselves for the future. Also, we need to keep focusing on the employee at the center of everything what we are trying to do. So as we prepare around the new normal or how the way it is going to be, or once we are coming back with that, there are sensitivities around, is the organization going to take care of me? What if something happens? So we need to look at from an extreme point of view. Am I well prepared? Is the organization well prepared? So if there is some sort of a issue that arises in terms of a log, somebody has been identified that they have the virus or whatever. So although there are enough temperature checks or other things that are coming up these days, everything is being put in place. The organization as such need to have policies in place or procedures in place where they should be able to go ahead and log down in a short time frame. So when you go ahead and have these kind of things put in place, employees feel safe and secure. And once the employees are feeling secure, you then have created a sort of frictionless workplace, and that brings them back in what they are trying to go ahead and do. And as much as possible, communicate, as Indrajit pointed out. That is a key thing where the senior management, the line manager, and and any other supervisors, so who need to go ahead and communicate down the line and make sure that the communication happens two-way and the employee is able to freely communicate with them what is going on. So at the end of the day, what is really required is that I provide an enhanced workplace and give the employee a good experience. And for that to happen, while everyone is trying to go ahead and work from home or work from the office based on how they are positioned, or a bit of both, what is resulting is that automation is something that will be required, and then it also leads to change in roles. This is where the likes of Deloitte and other organizations have started to come up what is called future of work. And in terms of the future of work, what I have seen is there are new changes in roles that are coming in. Some call it as jobs or super jobs, how they are going to go ahead and do it because of the artificial intelligence or anything what we are trying to bring in. I mean, if I can just take 1 minute to explain something here. In the engineering, procurement, and construction industry, EPC, I was quite pleased to know there are new roles that are coming up called drone data controller. I've never heard anything like this before, where a drone is utilized to go ahead, transport few things or do a survey or anything. There are new roles that are coming in. And this is where a new roles are going to evolve, and then organizations are going to model their business completely differently, how the way they go ahead and operate. And for example, that drone data controller, what sort of data they're going to bring in and how it is going to be stored, how they are going to utilize, automate, and bring everything in. So there is going to be a new ways of doing things, and this is a right moment as well for organizations to go ahead bring something a good amount of automation in the company.
Okay, thanks. And Sarang, what about from a HR perspective, the HR manager's perspective?
Yeah. So, hi, thanks, Tim. So, whenever I look at this word of future, it reminds me of a proverb or a quote. So, it says that there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. So, we are living in these times when things have changed drastically. But one thing remains, and that needs to be taken care by all the organizations, is they have to ensure that the employee experience has been at the topmost of their priorities. The reason being, initially, employee used to go to the office to have the experience, and that really kept him engaged, motivated, made him work, and all of that. But now we all know that there will be virtual teams, even for typical manufacturing organizations. So you know that apart from the employees who are on shop floor, others can probably work remotely. And for all these virtual employees, having the right tools and techniques for creating that right employee experience is something that is really, really needed. and that is where the organization should have to focus on. So it is up to people like Rajesh and Ybrant to create those tools and techniques which can really build this up, to measure this, and to create that kind of a positive attitude. There have always been digital tools which ensure that there is engagement tools, then there are moodometers and all of that, but then they were at the far end of the spectrum. The highlights was always the HR transactions, the reports, moving the appraisals online, having learning systems and all of that. But now a different perspective is going to have a look at it as to how do you ensure that the employees are getting the right kind of an experience, so that they stay with us, they are motivated, and they ensure that they are quite productive in their daily working. So I think so that's the key takeaway for preparing for the future, apart from obviously in addition to what Indrajit and Rajesh has said. And this is what needs to be focused on.
Okay, thanks for that. So we've now got 10 minutes left, I think, but I'd like to hand over to Rajesh to answer the question really, where does digital HR fit into this?
Thank you so much, Dan. Yeah, I'll try and manage this in a timely manner so that we have some time for the questions as well. So what is digitization, and what does HR needs to do in this? So why, if I can just take a minute to explain why digitization is required, is that, as Indrajit and Sarang have mentioned in the last few minutes, organizations should allow people to work remotely and give them a better experience. And if you are trying to go ahead and work using multiple, to complete a process, if you are trying to go ahead and work across systems or on your Excel sheets, or where there is no way for you to go ahead and share it seamlessly with other employees, it becomes a challenge how you go ahead and manage to deliver. So this is where a lot of delays happen, and then you'll not be able to go ahead and do justification to what you want to do in terms of giving a better experience. And as an overall experience point of view, what organizations are now coming up with what is called applications like SAP and others work there as well. It's a human experience management, and I would like, if I would like to go ahead and take a bit of that, we have operations and we have experience, and both of them together produce the kind of intelligence what is required for you to go ahead and operate well, and then produce what we need to complete the processes. So how do you achieve these? Is you need to involve all your stakeholders, put together a proper business process, and start off with what is called an early the critical processes. And then your solution needs to provide whatever the solution that you are trying to put together, it should be like a building block approach. So in an incremental stepwise manner, you go ahead and look at, okay, what is my fundamental design? Is it helping me? Is it helping me to go ahead and implement it and extend it to the other departments, other processes, and things like that? So whenever you are trying to implement, you should go ahead and always try and test it, make sure you're happy with it, your employees are happy, you are able to adapt to it, and that is what is required for you to be able to get to an improved decision making. You need to gain the capabilities to improve your decisions. So what Ybrant has done here is taken an approach where we are trying to create a flexible and dynamic approach in terms of creating the solutions for you, which has this provides single source of truth, and it helps you build that user adoption. And everything at the end of the day is your users need to adopt the technology, whatever that you are implementing. And this is the secret sauce to the entire success of what you are trying to do to give your employees, to give your organization a better experience. Yeah, if you can just take a minute also to continue, and if I can take support from Indrajit and Sarang as well. How you need to empower your organization, and for this, everyone in the organization need to participate, starting from the CXOs, the directors, and the employees as well. And as Indrajit pointed out, we need to create a culture of learning, and we need to create cross-functional teams. And if I can use the analogy of cricket or football, you need to have in your organization somebody like an all-rounder who can throw the ball, who can bowl, bat, as well as field as well. And in football terminology, if you look at it like a center midfielder who will be able to go ahead and work through anything, and they have developed that transferable skills. And this is where we need to look at, and this is where learning is going to come into play. So this is where we can go ahead and look at it from a multi goal-oriented organizations when we put in digitization. And if I can invite Indrajit to say a few words in terms of how organizations can be empowered using digitization, please.
Okay, thanks, Rajesh, for that. See, I think primarily, if we see very quickly, the digitization efforts in an organization started initially with a very much more to do with the transaction management. Okay, get the transaction in order. So it has come a long way. Currently, as you have pointed out, each of these stakeholders, the CXO, the directors, or the delivery champions, or the employee in large, each has got a different set of requirements from this whole thing. If I broadly say what are the four things which are very, very important in this journey for an organization, I think the first digitization effort can impact into the productivity and performance level of the people. So as long as the digital tools are making people more productive and enhancing the level of performance, reducing certain cycle time, reducing certain effort level, making people available to do more in a lesser time, I think that's one of the greatest benefits. The second element is also to help in terms of managing scale and growth. As organization wants to grow, and it is an inherent characteristics of an organization. Let's forget about COVID for the time being. Organizations will grow and scale up. So is the digitization or the digitized HR environment is helping that growth proposition? I think if that is true, then the CXOs and the directors, they would be pretty much interested to look into those digital efforts and digital products. Third element is I think operational excellence that will primarily in the domain of users, specifically the HR teams, whether it's learning and development, operation, rewards, etc., who are user of that. So they can create a great amount of excellence with the digitized product. And the last thing I think that will touch upon every employee, that what is the experience I'm getting out of all these things? Okay, is it making my life better? Is it creating a great experience? Is it adding value to me? Okay, so therefore these are the four things. If digitized digital approach is going to provide in the HR life cycle, then I think that empowers everybody in the organization.
Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant stuff. We're now sort of like into the last 4 or 5 minutes. I wonder if it's appropriate to ask if there's any questions, any burning questions that people would like to ask. Deathly hush, that's not a problem, because there's been a really rich amount of information. If there are any questions that you'd like to pose afterwards, it would be great to receive them via email. We're quite happy to respond to those and add those perhaps to some content that we'd share. If anyone would like a copy of the slides as we come away from this again, please email us, and my email address, tim.anderson@ybrantpartners.com. Be happy to send those out. Rajesh, would you like me to begin to wrap up, or is there anything you'd like to say before we finish?
Yes, so we just want to go ahead and utilize a couple of minutes, and we will wait. If anyone is trying to go ahead and ask a question, please feel free. One of the things what Indrajit, Sarang and I would like to add is in this particular slide, in terms of how the organizations need to look at a delivery point of view from an employee point of view. how we need to look at it. Sarang, if you could talk about a bit about how we can look at the building that mood assessments, or in terms of the implementation, what you have experienced in terms of implementing success factors yourself as part of the digitization.
Yeah. So in fact, there are two brief points which I want to make over here. Is when we talk of digitization, and more so from the implementation perspective, one of the first and foremost important thing is about the change of mindset. Employees throughout the organization should be willing to accept that there is going to be some change, and they have to be open to it. And obviously, change is very difficult, so no one really likes to go forward for it. And it has to be top down. So the senior management should be convinced that this is what is really required. They should be able to visualize, and they should be able to tell their managers that they have to drill it down. Only when the employee will see as to what it is adding value to his work and to the business as an overall impact, only then he'll realize. So change of mindset is something that I really would like to stress upon, which is very, very critical in any implementation if we have to talk about. You get the best tools, you get the best of the systems in place, but if people are not open to it, then the experience will go down, your user adoption will go down, and there will be no value created by just getting that particular tool. Second thing is more so from empowering the entire organization, while you touched upon a couple of minutes back on the single source of truth, and I want to just take it ahead from that point, that there will be different tools and techniques addressing different verticals within the HR function. One would be for the appraisals, another one would be for the mood assessments, another one would be for the learning, and they would be best in their parts. Now, what is important for any organization is to have a very good systems integration, because that is going to play a major role. You should have a single base system, which will be a single source of truth, and then there should be plug and play models. So there will be one system which is interacting with that, and it is giving you the right moods in the organization on a daily basis. There has to be something which gets plugged into the main system, and it gives you the HR analytics by which the business leaders can take decision calls towards the end of the day. So that is something which is very important, which the organizations in near future will have to start building up, because gone are the days when organizations really need one system, complete end-to-end, and then it would deliver as to whatever they would like. They would like to have a variety, but then that variety at the back end, people like you and me will have to ensure that the system integration is in place and there are no glitches. It's a seamless flow from one system to another to the third, and the employee experiences is at the helm. So those are, I think, so the 2 or 3 things which I would like to touch base upon as far as the implementation for any organization would go about.
That's brilliant, Sarang. It springs to mind as you're saying that, but it may be, we'll have to ask Rajesh, but maybe there's another session that we could have, because it seems to me that we've crossed that into the last minutes, and there's some really deep, rich, superb experience that you could share with us.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
only one thing what I would like to add, Tim, sorry, is we have a few more sessions that are coming up, probably next week or so. Please look up for at our website, our LinkedIn page. Ritesh is going to organize a CPM, Continuous Performance Management webinar. And followed by that, we'll be doing a few more webinars, one on the business and one on the technical side, which we would like to continue this, and hope to be in contact with you, closely communicating with you. If anyone has any questions or anything, please reach out to Tim and I. We'll be sharing our emails. We have generic emails as well, which we'll go ahead and share this. Thank you so much for attending. Tim, would you like to go ahead and close this off, please?
Yeah, look, this has been brilliant. And firstly, I'd love to thank our panel, because it's been a rich experience of getting some great experience, Sarang, Indrajit and Rajesh. And I'd just like to think, what are key takeaways? So I guess the thing is, see where you are, what you might need to do and put in place to support the confidence of your workforce. That's one of the big things that I've taken away. We need to plan. We need to set out a plan of how we're going to achieve this. And of course, once we've planned, the next thing is action. It's actually doing it. Management is a verb, not a not a noun, is the phrase. And if you've got actions to take, please don't be afraid to ask for help. Certainly at Ybrant, we'd be delighted to hear from you and to help support you in this. So just to wrap up, on behalf of the panel, I'd like to thank you for attending. I wish you all a great rest of the day, and in the tone of the times, please stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Indrajit. Thank you, Simon, everyone. Yeah.
Bye now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.